Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Unsleeping Historian. Settle in. Now, find your comfortable place. Let the weight of your day begin to fade and allow the noise of the present to recede like a distant tide. There is nothing for you to do here but listen, to relax, and to let your mind drift on the currents of time. Tonight, we journey to a place often visited in our collective imagination, Feudal Japan. When we hear those words, certain images tend to bloom in the mind, don't they? We see the silhouette of a samurai warrior, poised and resolute, his armor a work of lacquered art. We picture the impossible grace of a geisha moving through a polished wooden hallway. We imagine delicate cherry blossoms falling like pink snow upon the grounds of a serene temple, the glint of a perfectly forged katana blade, the stoic honor of the Bushido code. These images are not entirely false. They are a part of the story, but they are like the ornate roof of a great pagoda, beautiful, intricate, and the part that most often catches the eye. But tonight, our journey will be a much longer, much deeper one. We will travel past the roof, beyond the polished corridors and the celebrated warriors. We will descend to the foundation, to the immense, unglamorous, and often brutal reality that held the entire structure up. Our story is about the 90%, the silent majority of Japan, whose lives were bound not by honor codes, but by the turning of the seasons and the relentless demands of the soil. We will explore the vast, unwritten history of the peasant, the farmer, the bedrock of the samurai world. So, take a slow, deep breath. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable. Our journey tonight begins not in a warlord's castle, nor on a legendary battlefield. It begins in the pre-dawn chill of a small, thatched roof hut, surrounded by the quiet, expectant darkness of the Japanese countryside. It begins in the mud. Imagine yourself awakening. There is no gentle stirring, no lingering in the warmth of soft blanket. The waking is a necessity, a response to the subtle shift in the darkness outside, a signal that the long day of toil must begin again. You are lying not on a bed, but on a woven straw mat, a tatami laid over a packed earth floor. The air in your small hut is cool and thick with the scent of damp earth, old wood, and the lingering smoke from yesterday's cooking fire. The roof above you is a dense thatch of rice straw, and through this single, small window opening, you can see the first, faint, gray light of dawn painting the eastern sky. This is your home, a simple structure of wood, bamboo, and clay walls. It is small, containing perhaps only 1 or 2 rooms for your entire family. There is a central hearth, an airori, a sunken pit in the floor where a fire is kept. It is the heart of the home, providing meager warmth and the means to cook your simple meals. There is no privacy here. The sleeping, the eating, the mending of tools, the whispered conversations, they all happen in this shared space, under the watchful eyes of family. The rhythm of your life, and the lives of everyone in your village, is dictated by one thing. Yet, paradoxically, you rarely eat it. The rice you will spend your life cultivating is not food, in the way you might think of it. It is currency. It is tax. It is the property of the lord, the daimyo, who owns this land and, in a very real sense, owns you. Your breakfast is a small bowl of steamed millet or barley, perhaps with some pickled vegetables saved from the last harvest. It is a humble meal, meant only to provide the energy for the work to come. You eat in silence. The only sounds the quiet chewing and the rustle of your rough hemp clothing. As you step outside your hut, the cool morning air touches your skin. The village is slowly coming to life. Wisps of smoke rise from the thatched roofs of your neighbors' homes. The path is muddy, uneven. All around you are the rice paddies, the geometric pattern of flooded fields that define your world. In the spring, they are mirrors of the sky, reflecting the clouds and the early light. Now, the work begins. Imagine yourself stepping into the paddy. The water is cold, seeping into your woven straw sandals, the mud squelching between your toes. For hours upon hours, you will be bent at the waist, your back forming a constant, aching curve. You are transplanting the young rice seedlings, one by one, pushing their delicate roots into the thick mud in carefully spaced rows. It is meticulous, back-breaking labor. There is no conversation, only the rhythmic splash and squelch, a sound that will echo through the seasons of your life. The sun begins its climb, beating down upon your straw hat, your neck and shoulders burning under its gaze. Insects buzz around you, a constant, irritating presence. This is spring. Summer brings a different kind of toil. Now, you must tend to the growing rice. You wade through the paddies, pulling out the endless weeds that threaten to choke the precious crop. You manage the flow of water, opening and closing small earthen dams to ensure the levels are just right. The work is relentless, performed under the oppressive humidity and heat of the Japanese summer. A dull, persistent ache in your lower back becomes a constant companion, a feeling as familiar as hunger. And then comes autumn. This is the season of harvest, the most critical time of the year. There is a tension in the air, a mixture of hope and deep-seated anxiety. A good harvest might mean survival. A poor one caused by droughts, or floods, or pest could mean devastation. Using a simple, curved sickle, you cut the stalks of rice. The motion is repeated thousands upon thousands of times. Your hands become calloused and rough. The cut stalks are bundled, then hung on wooden racks too dry in the autumn sun. Once dry, the grains must be beaten against a wooden frame or with flails to separate the grain from the stalk. Then comes the winnowing, where the grain is tossed into the air, allowing the wind to carry away the lighter chaff, leaving the heavier grains of rice to fall onto a mat below. It is a process that consumes the entire village, a communal effort driven by shared desperation. This rice, this mountain of golden grain that represents a year of your life's energy, is not yours to keep. Soon, they will come. The samurai. They are not the heroic figures of storybooks. To you, they are the agents of power, the enforcers of a brutal system. They arrive from the local lord's castle town, walking with a purpose and an authority that sets them apart. They are dressed in finer clothes, and they carry 2 swords at their side, a long katana and a shorter waki's. These are not mere symbols. They are a constant, silent threat. You and the other villagers will gather. You will bow, your forehead nearly touching the ground. You do not make eye contact. To look a samurai in the eye is an act of defiance you cannot afford. Your village headman, trembling slightly, will present the records. The samurai tax collector, impassive and cold, oversees the measurement. The rice is poured into wooden boxes of a standard size, a unit of volume called a one koku. About 180 liters was considered the amount of rice needed to feed one person for 1 year. The tax rate, the ningu, is crippling. It is rarely less than 40% of your total harvest. Often, it is 50. In harsh times, it can be 60% or more. You watch as the majority of your year's work, the product of your sweat and aching muscles, is measured, recorded, and carted away. There is no negotiation. There is no appeal. This is the law, and the law is enforced by the sword. You live with the knowledge of Kirisuit Gomenda, samurai's legal right to strike down and kill a commoner for a perceived insult. A word spoken out of turn, a bow not low enough, a glance held for too long. Any of these could mean a swift, brutal end. Your life is not your own. It is conditional. The little rice that remains must see your family through the long, cold winter. It will be supplemented with millet, barley, and whatever vegetables you could grow in a small personal garden. But your obligations do not end with the tax. There are other duties. You may be conscripted for labor, forced to work on building a new road, or repairing the lord's castle. And in times of war, you or your sons might be called to serve as ashigaru or foot soldiers. Imagine being torn from your fields, handed a simple spear or a crude arquebus if you are lucky, and clad in the most basic of armor. You have no real training in warfare. You are little more than a pawn on the daimyo's game board, a body to absorb an enemy's charge. You march 4 days, your straw sandals falling apart, eating meager rations. The fear is a cold stone in your stomach. You are not fighting for honor or glory. You are fighting because you are commanded to, and the alternative is death at the hands of your own lord. Many who are conscripted this way never return to their village, their bodies left on some forgotten field, their lives a footnote in a lord's quest for power. Winter settles over the land. The fields are fallow, often covered in a blanket of snow. This is not a time of rest. It is a time of indoor work, of survival. You mend your farming tools, sharpening the blades, carving new handles. Your wife and daughters will be spinning thread and weaving cloth. You might craft things from straw sandals, raincoats, baskets, anything, to be used or perhaps sold for a few precious coins. The hut is cold. The small fire offers little comfort against the biting wind that finds its way through the cracks in the walls. Food is scarce. The portions grow smaller each day. Hunger is a constant, gnawing presence. Sickness is a constant threat. A simple infection, a fever, a bout of dysentery, things a modern person might easily. There are no doctors, only folk remedies and prayers. The mortality rate, especially for children, is tragically high. And yet, even in this life of relentless hardship, there are flickers of humanity. There are moments of simple grace. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of a perfectly mended tool. Imagine the taste of a single, sweet persimmon saved from the autumn. Imagine huddling with your family around a hearth on a winter night, listening to an elder tell a folk tale, a story of mischievous spirits or clever animals, a brief escape from the harshness of your world. Imagine a village festival, a rare day of reprieve, the sound of a flute and a drum, the sight of neighbors sharing what little they have. These moments are not enough to erase the suffering, but they are what allow you to endure it. They are the small threads of connection and culture that bind you to your family and your village. Your life is a cycle. You were born in this hut, and you will likely die within sight of these same fields. Your world is small, bounded by the mountains you can see on the horizon. Your name will not be recorded in any official history. You will not be celebrated in any epic tale. You are the foundation, unseen, unthanked, but essential. Every grand castle, every silken kimono, every philosophical debate in the Kyoto monastery, every famous samurai duelet is all paid for by your labor. Every grain of rice that fills the bowl of a poet or a shogun is a grain you planted, tended. Your struggle, your misery, is the silent, unacknowledged price of the entire feudal world. As you finally lay down on your straw mat at the end of another exhausting day, the deep ache in your bones is a testament to your existence. You close your eyes, not with the peaceful satisfaction of a day well spent, but with the weary resignation of one who knows that tomorrow will bring the exact same struggle all over again. And you sleep, because it is the only escape you have. From the vast, anonymous foundation of the peasantry, we now ascend. We move into the world of the warrior class, the samurai, where life was governed by a different, yet equally unforgiving, set of rules. Here, it was not the seasons that dictated existence, but a complex web of honor, duty, and loyalty. Our next story is perhaps one of the most famous in all of Japanese history. It is a tale that has been told and retold for centuries, a national legend that speaks to the very heart of the samurai ethos. It is the story of the 47 Ronin, a story of profound loyalty, cold patience, and inevitable tragedy. It is not a story of glorious battle, but of a quiet, smoldering resolve that, once ignited, could not be extinguished. The year is 1701. The place is Edo Castle, the very center of the Tokugawa shogunate's power. Imagine the vast complex, a labyrinth of polished wooden corridors, paper screens painted with delicate landscapes, and silent, watchful guards. It is a world of immense ceremony and rigid protocol, where a misspoken word or a misplaced step can have dire consequences. Into this world comes a young daimyo, a provincial lord named Asano Nak. He has been given a great honor to receive and entertain envoys from the imperial court in Kyoto. Being a man from the countryside, he is not fully versed in the intricate court etiquette required for such a task. Therefore, he is instructed to learn from a master of ceremonies, a powerful and high-ranking official named Kira. Here, the seeds of tragedy were sown. Historical accounts are varied. Some say Lord Kira was corrupt, expecting a substantial bribe from Asano that was never offered. Others suggest Kira was simply arrogant and cruel, taking offense at the young lord's perceived lack of sophistication. Whatever the reason, Kira began to treat Asano with contempt. He offered insults, some subtle, some overt. He gave him incorrect instructions, seeking to publicly humiliate him. For Lord Asano, a man of pride and a follower of the warrior's code, this was an unbearable shame. The slights accumulated, day after day, a slow and steady poisoning of his honor. In the world of the samurai, honor was more valuable than life itself. To have it publicly stripped away was a fate worse than death. The breaking point came in a main corridor of the shogun's castle. The final insult was delivered. What was said is lost to history, but its effect was absolute. In a moment that shattered the sacred peace of the castle, Lord Asano drew his short sword and lunged at Kira. He wounded him, slashing at his face and shoulder, before guards quickly separated them. The act itself was not fatal to Kira, but the location of the act was fatal to Asano. To draw a weapon within the walls of Edo Castle was an unforgivable crime. It was a capital offense, and the shogun's judgment was swift and absolute. Lord Asano was sentenced to death. But for a samurai, death came with its own ritual, its own final, terrible honor. He was ordered to commit. Picture the scene. It is not a scene of violence, but of immense, solemn gravity. Lord Asano, now a condemned man, is brought to a quiet courtyard garden. He is dressed in white robes, the color of death and purity. He kneels silently on a white mat. Before him, a short blade is placed on a lacquered tray. He is permitted to write a final poem, a death poem, a tradition among the samurai class. His reads, "More than the cherry blossoms, inviting a wind to blow them away. I am wondering what to do with the remaining spring." With the quiet composure demanded by his code, he performed the act. He made the prescribed cut, and standing behind him, as was the custom, was his chosen second. His Kishakunin performed his own solemn duty, ending his lord's suffering with a single, swift sword stroke. Lord Asano's life was over. His honor, in his own eyes, was preserved in death, but the consequences of his actions rippled outward. By law, with their lord dead and his domain confiscated by the shogunate, all of his samurai retainers were now. They became ronin. To be a ronin was to be a waveman, a drifter. It was a state of profound disgrace. A samurai's identity was tied to his lord. Without a master to serve, he had no purpose, no stipend, no social standing. He was an untethered man, often viewed with suspicion and scorn. Lord Asano's several hundred samurai were now scattered, adrift in the world. Among them was his principal counselor, a man named Jishi. While many of the ronin dispersed Jishi, and a core group of them made a secret vow. They would not let their lord's death go unavenged. They would restore his honor by killing the man who had caused it. But Kira was a powerful man, and he was not a fool. He knew that Asano's men might seek revenge. His mansion was heavily fortified, and his spies were everywhere, watching the movements of the former ache, and so began a period of deep and patient deception. To lull Kira into a false sense of security, Jishi and his men embarked on a deliberate performance of dishonor. They understood that their vengeance could not be swift. It had to be cold, calculated, and perfectly timed. Jishi himself moved to Kyoto and began to live a life of Imagine this man, a respected leader, now spending his days in the pleasure districts. He frequented tea houses and brothels, drank to excess, and engaged in public brawls. He divorced his loyal wife to protect her. He allowed himself to become a caricature of a fallen samurai, a disgrace to his class. Spies reported his every shameful act back to Kira. In one famous incident, a man from Satsuma, seeing Jishi lying drunk in the street, kicked him and spat on him for having fallen so low, for being such a disloyal coward to his dead lord. Jishi bore it all. Every insult, every look of disgust, was a stone in the foundation of his plan. For over a year and a half, the ronin waited, scattered across Japan, working as humble craftsmen or monks, hiding their identities and their weapons. They were playing the long game, a test of patience and resolve that is difficult for us to comprehend. Finally, Kira's spies reported back that Asano's men were broken. Their leader Jishi was a pathetic drunkard. They were no longer a threat. Satisfied, Kira relaxed his guard. This was the moment Jishi had waited for. Secretly, the ronin converged on Edo. There were 47 of them. On a cold, snowy night in December of 1702, clad in simple, dark clothing and makeshift armor, they gathered. Their plan for assaulting Kira's mansion was meticulous, born of months of secret study of its layout. The attack was not a chaotic frenzy. It was a silent, coordinated military operation. One group, led by Aishi's son, would attack from the rear gate. The other, led by Jishi himself, would storm the front. They sent an archer to a neighboring roof to proclaim their intentions, to announce that they were not common robbers, but warriors seeking to avenge their master, and that no harm would come to the innocent neighbors. Imagine the muffled sounds in the snowy darkness. The crunch of footsteps, the quiet splintering of a wooden gate, the sharp, stifled cries of surprised guards. The resistance from Kira's retainers was fierce, but the ronin were resolute, fueled by nearly 2 years of repressed purpose. Men fell on both sides in the cold, dark corridors and snowy gardens of the mansion. The ronin methodically searched for one man. They found Kira Yoshinaka, cowering in a storage shed. They identified him by the scar on his forehead left by their master's blade. Jishi, with the utmost formality, knelt before the terrified man. He identified himself and his group, and explained the purpose of their intrusion. He then offered Kira the same honor that had been afforded their lord. He invited him to commit seppuku with the very dagger that had been used by Lord Asano, and offered to act as his second. It was a chance for an honorable death. Kira, trembling, did not respond. He would not take the blade, seeing that he would not perform the act. The Ronin knew their duty. They held him down and, with that same dagger, they took the measure of their revenge. They secured the proof of their lord's vindication. Their objective was complete. There was no looting, no further violence. They extinguished all the lamps and fires in the mansion to prevent a fire from spreading through the neighborhood, and they departed. They then began a slow, solemn procession through the sleeping streets of Edo. Imagine the sight. A column of 46 blood-stained men. One had been sent as a messenger walking in the pre-dawn light, carrying the head of their enemy in a bucket. Word of their deeds spread like wildfire, and the people of Edo emerged from their homes, not to condemn them, but to offer them rest and refreshment, to praise their loyalty. Their final destination was the Sengakuji Temple, the place where their master, Lord Asano, was buried. There, they washed Kira's head in a well and laid it, along with the dagger, before their master's tomb. They offered prayers, burned incense, and then, their duty fulfilled, they sat down and quietly awaited the judgment of the shogunate. The authorities were now faced with a profound dilemma. The Ronin had committed multiple, serious crimes. They had engaged in a conspiracy and carried out a vendetta, which was illegal. They had killed a high-ranking official. By law, they were criminals, who should be executed. However, they had also acted in perfect accordance with the warrior code of Bush. They had displayed unwavering loyalty to their master, a virtue held in the highest esteem. To execute them as common criminals would be to reject the very code upon which the samurai class was built. After weeks of debate, the shogun delivered his sentence. The 46 Ronin at the temple would be allowed to die with honor. They were all ordered to commit. It was not a punishment, but a commendation, a recognition of their status as true samurai. One by one, in the courtyards of the daimyo who held them, the Ronin calmly ended their lives, just as their master had done. They were then buried at Sengakuji. Their story was an immediate sensation. It became the subject of poems, stories, and most famously, kabuki plays under the title Sheshingura, the treasury of loyal retainers. To this day, the graves at Sengakuji Temple are a site of pilgrimage, where incense smoke constantly curls in the air, a testament to a loyalty so absolute that it transcended life, law, and time itself. It is a quiet, somber story, a story that reminds us that beneath the veneer of ceremony and power in feudal Japan, there were currents of duty and honor so strong, they could lead men to patiently endure disgrace for years, only to embrace a violent death as their ultimate and most cherished reward. We have journeyed through the mud of the rice paddies and walked the formal corridors of power. We have seen how the rigid structures of feudal Japanese society could define a life, whether through the toil of a peasant or the honor code of a samurai. Now, we must step away from the mainstream, away from the rice taxes and the vendettas that were understood, if not condoned, by the shogun. We must delve into a history that was actively suppressed, a story that had to unfold in whispers, in hidden rooms, and in the quiet courage of the human heart. This is the story of the Kakua Kurishitanda, hidden Christians of Feudal Japan. It is a tale of a faith imported from a distant land, a faith that was brutally persecuted and forced to go underground, surviving for over 2 centuries in remarkable and ingenious ways. Our story begins, not in Japan, but in Europe, in the Age of Discovery. In 1549, a ship arrived on the shores of Kyushu, Japan's southernmost main island. Aboard was a Spanish Jesuit priest named Francis Xavier. He came with a mission to bring the word of Christianity to this island nation. Initially, the mission was surprisingly successful. The daimyo of various Western clans were receptive. Some were drawn to the novelty of the European teachings and the promise of trade that came with the southern barbarians. As the Europeans were called, the Jesuits were educated men of science and art, which impressed many Japanese lords. For a time, Christianity was tolerated, even fashionable in some circles. Churches were built, communities of converts grew, and by the end of the 16th century, there were several 100,000 Japanese Christians. But the political climate of Japan was shifting dramatically. The country was being unified under the iron will of powerful warlords, culminating in the establishment of the Tokugawa shogunate at the beginning of the 17th century. The shoguns grew deeply suspicious of this foreign religion. They saw it as a potential tool for European colonial ambitions, a threat to the established social order and the traditional Buddhist and Shinto faiths that underpinned their authority. The tolerance ended, and the persecution began. It started with edicts, banning the practice of Christianity. Then came the expulsion of the foreign missionaries. Finally, it descended into systematic and brutal violence. Japanese Christians were ordered to renounce their faith. Those who refused faced unimaginable cruelty. They were branded, burned, crucified, or subjected to the agonizing torture of the pit, hung upside down over a pit of filth until they recanted or died. Stories of martyrdom from this period are numerous and harrowing. In Nagasaki, a major center of Christianity, 26 men and boys were crucified in 1597, becoming symbols of the faith's suffering. The Shimabara Rebellion in the late 1630s, a revolt of mostly Christian peasants against an oppressive lord, was crushed by the shogun's armies with overwhelming force. After tens of thousands were slaughtered, the shogunate decided to extinguish the faith for good. Japan closed its borders. The Sakoku, or chained country policy, began. Almost all contact with the outside world was severed. The remaining Christians were hunted relentlessly. It seemed, to all outside observers, that Christianity in Japan had been completely eradicated, but it had not been destroyed. It had simply disappeared from view. Imagine a small, coastal village in a remote part of Kyushu. The villagers go about their daily lives just as any other Japanese peasants. They fish, they farm the terraced hillsides, they pay their taxes to the local lord. They are registered with the local Buddhist temple, as was required by law for every single family. On the surface, they are indistinguishable from any other community. But behind the closed paper screens of their homes, in the dead of night, another life unfolds. Here, in secret, they practice a faith that they have inherited from their great-grandparents. The priests are gone. The Bibles have been lost or destroyed. The grand churches are distant memories. All they have are the fragmented teachings passed down through generations, orally, in secret. Their faith had to adapt to survive. It became a hybrid, a unique fusion of Christian belief and Japanese folk tradition, to avoid detection by the shogun's officials, who would periodically conduct purges and demand that everyone trample on a holy image of Fumaitu, prove they were not Christian. They developed a complex system of camouflage. Imagine a family gathered around their Buddhist altar, the Butsudan. To a visiting official, it would look perfectly normal. But the family knows a secret. The statue of the Bodhisattva Kannon, the Buddhist goddess of mercy, is not canon to them, with its gentle, androgynous features. It serves as a hidden icon of the Virgin Mary. They look upon this Buddhist statue and see the mother of their god. They call her Maria Kannon. Their prayers were not written down. They were chants, passed from parent to child, their meanings often becoming obscured over time. The Latin and Portuguese prayers of the original missionaries were slowly, their sounds morphing over generations into something that sounded almost like a Buddhist chant. Ave Maria might become I Maria. The Paternoster became a string of sounds, a sacred formula whose original meaning was known only to the community's leaders. Their rituals were also hidden in plain sight. A sip of sake rice wine from a particular ceremonial cup was not a toast. It was their secret Eucharist. The baptism of a newborn was done in private, with a quiet prayer, the water blessed in the name of the Dusu. Their word for God, derived from the Latin de. The roles of the church were maintained by the villagers themselves. The community would have a leader, the Shikata, who was responsible for the calendar, for knowing when the important holy days like Christmas and Easter were. Another leader, the Mizukata, was the baptizer, the one who brought new members into the secret faith. This hidden world was incredibly fragile. Discovery meant death not just for an individual, but for their entire family, and often their entire community. Children were taught from the earliest age never to speak of what happened inside the home. A single careless word could lead to disaster. It was a life lived under constant, quiet fear, and so it continued. For more than 200 years, a generation would be born, live their entire lives as hidden Christians, and die, passing the secret faith on to their children. They had no contact with the outside Christian world. They had no priests, no new teachings. They had only their shared memory and their camouflaged rituals. They believed themselves to be the last Christians on earth. Then, in the mid-19th century, the world changed. The black ships of American Commodore Matthew Perry arrived, forcing Japan to open its borders once again. Foreign trade and diplomacy resumed. In Nagasaki, a new church was built for the growing community of foreign traders and diplomats. One day in 1865, a group of Japanese peasants from the nearby village of Urakami approached the new French priest at the church. They were hesitant, fearful. One of the women, timidly, spoke to him. She asked him 3 questions that had been passed down for generations as a way to identify a true priest. "Do you have a wife?" The priest answered no. "Do you honor the Pope in Rome?" He answered that he did. And finally, she pointed to the statue of the Virgin and Child he had in the church, and asked if he honored her. He confirmed that he did. Tears streamed down the woman's face. "We are the same heart as you," she said. "We are." The priest was stunned. The world was stunned. It was a discovery of immense historical and religious significance. A fate thought to have been extinguished 2 centuries earlier had survived, preserved in secret, like a seed dormant in the earth through a long, harsh winter, waiting for the first rays of spring to bloom again. Even after this discovery, the ordeal was not over. The ban on Christianity was still officially in place, and a final, brutal persecution of the Urakami Christians followed. But the new political climate and pressure from Western nations soon led to the Japanese government finally lifting the ban in 1873. Some of the hidden Christians chose to rejoin the global Catholic Church, learning the Orthodox teachings and abandoning their unique, syncretic practices. But many did not. They chose to continue practicing the faith of their ancestors, the faith that had been preserved at such great cost. They became known as Hana Kirishiten. Their traditions, born of persecution and isolation, had become their identity, and they were unwilling to give them up. The story of the hidden Christians is a profound testament to resilience. It shows how belief and culture can adapt and transform under immense pressure. It is a quiet history, not of dramatic battles, but of silent prayers offered to a Buddhist statue, of sacred words disguised as chants, and of a courage that was measured not in heroic acts, but in the simple, dangerous, and generations-long act of remembering. We have explored the lives of those at the bottom of the feudal pyramid, and those bound by its codes of conduct. We have ventured into the secret histories that unfolded in its shadows. Now, for our final segment, we will ascend to the very top. We will step inside the world of the rulers themselves, the great daimyo, who held absolute power over their domains. Our journey takes us inside a daimyo's castle. This is not just a military fortress. It is the administrative center, the cultural heart, and the ultimate symbol of a lord's power and prestige. It is a world of lacquered halls, intricate rituals, and layers upon layers of carefully constructed authority. Imagine approaching the castle from a distance. It does not simply appear. It dominates the landscape. Perched atop a hill, its massive stone base, the Eshigaki, slopes upwards at a graceful but intimidating curve. These stones, some of them enormous, were fitted together without mortar, a testament to incredible engineering. The walls are punctuated by watchtowers and topped by the main keep, the Tenshu with its multiple tiers of elegantly curved, tiled roofs. The white plaster walls gleam in the sun, broken by dark wooden timbers and lattice windows. The entire structure is designed to project an image of unbreachable strength and sublime beauty. As a visitor, you would not simply walk in. You would navigate a maze. The path to the main keep is a confusing, winding route, forcing you through a series of heavily fortified gates and narrow, walled pathways. This is a defensive design. Attackers who breach one gate would find themselves trapped in a small courtyard, exposed to arrow fire from the walls above. The journey inward is a constant reminder that you are entering a place of immense power, and you are doing so only by the Lord's permission. Let us imagine we are privileged visitors, perhaps emissaries from another domain, and we are granted entry into the main castle residence. We leave the raw stone and military fortifications behind and step into a world of refined elegance. We remove our footwear, and our feet now pad silently across floors of polished dark wood. The corridors are long and straight, flanked by screen doors, or these sliding screens are covered in thick paper, often decorated with magnificent paintings. One set of screens might depict a serene landscape of mountains and mist, another a powerful tiger in a bamboo grove, another a scene from a classic tale. These are not mere decorations. They are statements of the Lord's wealth, tastes, and cultural sophistication. We are guided through a series of antechambers, each one grander than the last. The air is cool, and smells faintly of cypress wood and old silk. The light is soft, filtered through the delicate paper of the sheji screens that line the outer walls. We do not hear loud noises here. We hear the rustle of silk kimonos, as attendants glide silently by, their movements precise and economical. We hear the quiet murmur of conversation from other rooms. Everything is controlled, ordered, and deliberate. Finally, we are brought to the audience hall. This is the heart of the daimyo's power. It is a large, open room, its tatami-matted floor stretching out before us. The far wall is slightly raised. There, seated on a silk cushion, is the He is a figure of immense stillness. He may be clad in voluminous silk robes of a subtle, dark color. His face is impassive, revealing nothing. His retainers and highest-ranking samurai are seated nearby, in meticulously ordered rows according to their rank. There is a wide, empty space of tatami between us and him, a physical representation of the social distance that separates us. Our meeting is not a casual conversation. It is a ritual. We kneel and perform a deep, prolonged bow, our foreheads touching the mat. We do not speak until we are spoken to. The exchange is formal, polite, and filled with layers of meaning. Every word, every gesture, is freighted with significance. A promise made here is binding. A threat, however veiled in courteous language, is deadly serious. This is where treaties are forged, wars are decided, and the fates of thousands of people are determined. After our audience, let us imagine we are given a rare tour of the private residence within the castle walls. We move through corridors that connect the formal reception halls to the daimyo's personal living quarters. Here, the scale is more intimate, but the elegance is no less apparent. We might see a study with scrolls of calligraphy and books of Chinese classics. We might pass a tea room, a small, rustic chamber designed for the quiet contemplation of the tea ceremony, an art form highly prized by the warrior class for its emphasis on mindfulness and simplicity. We might even be granted a glimpse of the gardens. Tucked within the castle walls is a space of curated, natural beauty. There are no flower beds here in the Western sense. Instead, there is a carefully arranged landscape of rocks, moss, raked sand, and meticulously pruned pine trees. A small pond might hold brightly colored koi. A stone lantern sits at a precise point. This is not a place for a casual stroll. It is a landscape for contemplation, a three-dimensional painting meant to evoke a sense of peace, harmony, and the eternal truths of nature. But beneath this surface of serene power and refined culture, there is another reality. The castle is a place of constant vigilance. The silent attendants are not just servants. They are also eyes and ears. The daimyo lives with the ever-present threat of betrayal and assassination. He must trust his closest advisors, but he must also be wary of them. His food may be tested for poison. His sleeping quarters are deep within the castle complex, protected by multiple guards and nightingale floors. Corridors designed to squeak and sing at the slightest footstep, making a silent approach impossible. The lives of the women of the castle are equally constrained. The daimyo's wife and concubines live in a separate section, the joku, or great interior. It is a world unto itself, a gilded cage governed by its own strict hierarchy and intricate politics. Their primary duty is to produce an heir, ensuring the continuation of the lord's lineage. Their lives are ones of immense luxury, but also of intense pressure and limited freedom. The castle, then, is a place of profound contrasts. It is a military fortress and a palace of art. It is a center of government and a private home. It is a place of serene tea ceremonies and deadly political intrigue. It is a symbol of the daimyo's absolute power over his domain, and a prison of his own making, where he is constantly guarded and watched. It stands in stark opposition to the hut of the peasant we visited at the beginning of our journey. The peasant's life was one of physical hardship, dictated by the cycles of nature. The daimyo's life is one of material comfort, but it is dictated by the equally relentless cycles of power, ritual, and danger. The peasant fears the samurai tax collector. The daimyo fears the assassin's blade and the shifting loyalties of his neighboring lords. Both are trapped within the same rigid feudal structure, one at the very bottom, one at the very top. The lacquered halls of the castle and the muddy floor of the huts are two sides of the same coin, two inseparable parts of the world of feudal Japan. And so, our long journey through the landscape of feudal Japan comes to a close. We have felt the cold mud of the rice paddy between our toes. We have witnessed the solemn tragedy of the loyal Ronin. We have uncovered a faith that survived in secret for centuries. And we have walked the silent, polished halls of power. We have seen that history is never just one story. It is a chorus of countless lives, lived in vastly different worlds, all existing at the same time. The misery of the peasant was the price for the daimyo's castle. The honor of the samurai was a code that could lead to both greatness and death. The faith of the hidden Christians was a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. These stories, these lives, feel so distant now, separated from us by a great ocean of time. Their struggles, their beliefs, their daily realities are not our own. And that is, perhaps, the final comfort. As you lie here, in the safety and warmth of your own bed, in the quiet of your own time, you can feel the contrast. The air you breathe is not thick with the smoke of a hearth fire. The floor beneath you is not cold, packed. The sounds you hear are the gentle, familiar sounds of your own peaceful world. The anxieties that may trouble your mind are not those of starvation, or of a sudden, violent death for a misspoken word. The past is a vast and fascinating country, a place we can visit in our minds to learn, to wonder, and to understand. But we are also blessed to be able to leave it, to return to the present moment. So now, let these stories of old Japan begin to dissolve. Let the images of samurai and peasants, of castles and secret gatherings, fade like watercolor paintings in the rain. Allow them to become part of the quiet landscape of your dreams. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to analyze or understand. Simply let go. Let the steady rhythm of your own breath be your anchor. Feel the gentle pull of sleep, a peaceful and welcome tide. The Unsleeping Historian has told his tales, and now it is time for you to rest. Sleep well.